seniors, welcome to part two of this second stage of the Vietnam War, kind of the fighting unit. I'm calling it 23.6.2 because apparently I'm falling in love with numbers. So I just wanted to close this out. I kind of rushed at the end of last video because I felt myself going long, which I was almost at 15 minutes, and I don't want a video to go over 15 minutes ever. So the Gulf of Tonkin incident was that kind of attack by the North Vietnamese on a U.S. destroyer in the Gulf of Tonkin. All right, LBJ in Congress is going to pass the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, right? The phantom attack, right? We kind of don't think that this really happened. We think it was just a controversy created by the United States so that we could get this act passed, but that's a story for another day. All right, so here it is, the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. All right, take all necessary measures to repel any armed attack against the forces of the United States and prevent no further aggression. That's what happened. So now LBJ has the authority to send in troops without war declaration. All right, so Congress does not need to declare a war in Vietnam, which is why it's now called the Vietnam War. So here we go. All right, so America gets into Vietnam and we learn a lot. All right, we know off the bat that we are technologically superior to the Vietnamese. That's not a question. But we also learned that this war is very, very, very different because of the vast jungle space that that is part of Vietnam, right? There's a lot of jungle, and we get there and we realize that it's going to be a problem. And we also realize another problem is we've got like the NV. All right, we've got the NVA, we've got the North Vietnamese Army, NVA, right? The Viet Minh, as I referred to them in that first video. But we know them. Right? We know them. We kind of know where to find them a little bit. It's these guys. It's these guys that give the United States trouble. We don't know where to find them. A lot of them are not dressed in uniform. I make Vietnam very alike to what a U.S. troop fights in the Middle East right now with the idea of terrorism, because a terrorist doesn't have a uniform. It could be anybody, which is why there's a lot of kind of controversial deaths that happen overseas right now in the Middle East, because we have U.S. soldiers that don't really know who they should be shooting all the time. That happened in Vietnam, which is why this is a very controversial war. And a lot of the images we see are not really images that we like to see out of war. So we know that this is going to be a guerrilla-style fight. We know that the Viet Cong are hiding in the jungles. We know that, in Germany in World War II, right, when we wanted to bomb, we would look for industrial centers so that we're taking out their manufacturing power, we're taking out their supply chains. Vietnam didn't really operate like that, all right? Vietnam has something called the Ho Chi Minh Trail, which I guess I'll address later on. I know it's in here. They've got the Ho Chi Minh Trail, but other than that, we're not really looking at these big, vast cities with these industrial centers to bomb that. And then if you bomb that supply chain, the war is going to be easier won. That's not how this war worked. So stage one is going to be to try and smoke out the Viet Cong from the jungles, and it's called Operation Rolling Thunder. All right. In this operation, all right, we've got a couple goals. Destroy military and industrial targets. Like I said, that is a part of this, but there aren't many. Right? And then psychological smash. We want to destroy their morale. We want them to look up and see how kind of massive and powerful the United States military can be, how much better we are than them, right? The results is it does more harm to the South than it does the North, all right? Because we're taking out their supply chains and their supply lines. Again, the North Vietnamese Army is stationed in the North. The Southern Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, are guerrillas, right? They don't have traditional supply chains, and they had a supply chain that we didn't know about at the time. It was called the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Essentially, I'm going to draw a really great picture here. You ready for it? Oh, I've skipped. Go back. Here we go. All right. You ready for my fantastic maps? All right, here we go. We've got North Vietnam. We've got South Vietnam. We've got Cambodia. Oh boy, we've got Cambodia. All right. So the Ho Chi Minh Trail is a trail that goes all the way from the top of North Vietnam. It even goes into China. All right. And it goes around the 17th parallel into Cambodia like this, and then all the way through South Vietnam as well. All right. So they could take this trail, they could kind of avoid that 17th parallel, and they could carry supplies all the way from the north and supply all the troops in South Vietnam. And they're doing so by going through Cambodia most of the time. And we're not trying to bomb Cambodia and bring them into a conflict. So it's a very, very difficult thing for us to take out these supply lines. And in Operation Rolling Thunder, we do more harm to South Vietnam than we do North Vietnam. And a crazy statistic: more bombs were dropped on Vietnam than were dropped in all of World War II on Germany and Japan combined. Operation Rolling Thunder was a massive bombing campaign, and it still didn't do a whole hell of a lot in terms of defeating the Vietnamese. Here's a picture. This is what Operation Rolling Thunder looked like. It's called carpet bombing. It's drop a lot of little tiny bombs, all right? And as the plane goes, bombs drop, and it blows up an entire strip underneath it, all right? So this was a way to kind of get the Viet Cong out of those forests, because we were essentially bombing the forest. All right, here's another thing, Operation Rolling Thunder. I don't know why this is still here. That's bothering me. If it shows up on the next slide, I'm going to be triggered. Good. All right. So again, Operation Rolling Thunder. We're bombing North Vietnam as well in the industrial centers there, but again, it's not that effective. It doesn't do that much. We're not talking about Germany in World War II here, but yet, do you remember back when we did World War I told you 19th century tactics, 20th century technologies. Generals take old tactics and apply them to a new war. We're taking old tactics and applying it to a new war, and it just doesn't really do a whole hell of a lot. Here it is. I knew it would be here. So here's the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and it goes up from North Vietnam into Laos. It does touch into Cambodia over here, and then into South Vietnam. And from North Vietnam and China, they are able to supply all of their rebels in the south, all the way down to Saigon, the capital city. So it's this massive trail that's the way that the NVAs supplied their Viet Cong allies, and we didn't really know about it that much, and we didn't bomb it that much early on, so all of these bombings didn't do the job that it was intended to do. All right, Operation Rolling Thunder. You guys can click and read these little infographs on your own. Let me move over. Here we go. All right. Again, it didn't work. All right. Industry wasn't that important to the North Vietnamese. That's kind of what I'm talking about here. This isn't Germany in World War II. It was an agricultural society that was very self-sustaining. The Ho Chi Minh Trail, they're carrying things by foot. All right. They're just lugging things the whole time. So taking out industrial centers doesn't really do what it's meant to do. They continue to get supplies from China and from the Soviet Union, so they're producing things up there. So even if we were to blow up an industrial center in North Vietnam, they're still getting their supplies from China or the Soviet Union. And if anything, you guys can't see that. All right. Again, the troops didn't need a whole lot to live off of. They're not really these paved roads that we're blowing up. They're supplying via dirt trails, and the roads that we did blow up were not very easy to fix. And again, it's hurting the South Vietnamese more than it is the North Vietnamese. All right. So we've got escalation after 1965-66. By 1968, we have over 500,000 advisors stationed in South Vietnam. All right. Then we're going to move to another tactic called napalm. All right. Operation Rolling Thunder didn't work because it didn't take out what it was intended to take out. So now we're going to go to napalm. All right. Napalm is this very powerful incendiary weapon, right? It's essentially tar that we put kind of fire on top of, and it's very, very flammable. It will burn anything and everything in its path. So we said, all right, if they're hiding in jungle and trees, in holes in the ground, we will literally burn them out. So we dropped 20,000 tons of napalm on Vietnam, North and South Vietnam, between the years 1965 and 1973. All right, a lot of destruction to a very beautiful area of the world. This is a very, very, very famous photo that we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we talk about the role of media and we talk about the psychology of a soldier in the Vietnam War. But this, her name is Napalm Girl. All right, and we see her village was just kind of bombed by napalm, and we see all these children running away from what just happened, to their village, and we see the U.S. troops kind of very casually walking, and we see kind of this we see differentiation between the U.S. troops and kind of what's going on in their head and these innocent Vietnamese, in this case, children. It could be adults in this picture as well, but Vietnamese children that are kind of running for their lives. And we just see this polar opposite effect of what's going on. They kind of seem numb to it right here. All right, and then they're running for their lives. She is still alive. She still does kind of lectures about the atrocities that she saw in kind of her homeland during the Vietnam War. Yeah, super interesting. Very, very, very famous picture. This is napalm, right? It literally will blow up the jungle. It will burn the jungle down. Agent Orange, another kind of genius idea by the United States. Again, they're hiding in bushes. They're hiding in trees. We need to get that away, right? America tried to turn the Vietnam War into as traditional a war as possible, and that wasn't the case. Again, we've got generals that are applying old war tactics to a new war, which is why Vietnam didn't go very well for us. I'm going to talk about this again when we get to the psychology of a soldier in the Vietnam War. But in World War II, we have go take that town, right? Go take that city. Go take this river. Go take this road. It's important locations that when you tell a troop to go do it, they understand the significance of it, and they understand the reasoning behind why they're doing what they're doing. In Vietnam, it's go over to those woods. And the troops eventually start to become so deteriorated because they're not even taking anything of value, in their opinion, value. It's not a road. It's not a town. It's not a river. It's literally a stretch of trees. And they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing, which is why they become so psychologically defeated in the Vietnam War. It's not the same as the old wars, but yet the generals treated it the same. So it just doesn't have a very good effect. All right. And another way that we try to get the Viet Cong out of this guerrilla style tactic is Agent Orange. And essentially Agent Orange is a weed killer. So again, we tried to kill the trees, but it doesn't really kill a lot of trees. It kills a lot of people. Very, very, very poisonous to a human to kind of ingest or breathe any of this in. 4 million acres are kind of scorched by this, and 1.3 million people are affected by this. I'm not going to show it in this, but if you look at Agent Orange kind of effects years later, you have children that are born with severe disabilities or abnormalities or mutations from the poisonous gas that was Agent Orange. Again, I'm not going to show it here, but if you want to look that up on your own, it's definitely worth seeing. We learn from our mistakes, right? This is a little kind of map about the crop zones that we dropped Agent Orange on. So you see a lot of red here, especially. All right, we've got some targeted. Oopsies. We've got some targeted areas here. All right, these people are going to be very, very, very negatively affected by the gases and the poison that's being dropped on them. All right, and it's going to be in their water supply, their animals, everything, and it has really, really terrible effects. This is Agent Orange. All right, so this is a plane, weed dropping a weed killer, right? And again, the effects are going to be really, really, really widespread.